A lens flashes, and for one instant, time freezes. London, 1966. The sound of shutters and jazz colliding through smoke and neon. In the middle of it all stands David Hemmings, camera in hand, immortalized as the restless face of a city too young to understand its own beauty. In Blow Up, he wasn't just the character, he was the decade itself. Cool, curious, detached, the eye that saw everything but himself. Yet when the noise faded and the lights cooled, his reflection vanished too. The man who captured the meaning of an age drifted into obscurity, quietly erased by the same fame that once made him untouchable. He lived as an image. He disappeared like one. And what remains now is not the fame he gained, but the silence that followed it. David Hemmings was never the kind of star that Hollywood could invent. He wasn't sculpted by studios or trained to smile on cue. He was born from rebellion, from the strange collision of art and accident that defined 1960 seconds Britain. Before the flashbulbs, he was a boy soprano in cathedral halls, singing for Benjamin Britten, unaware that his voice would one day vanish, and with it, his innocence. When Michelangelo Antonioni cast him in Blow Up, Hemmings became more than an actor. He became a symbol. His sharp suit, cold stare, and restless energy captured the pulse of swinging London, a world spinning so fast it couldn't see itself clearly. He embodied youth, arrogance, and the quiet terror beneath it all. But the same frame that made him famous also trapped him inside it. Blow Up turned him into the mirror of his generation, and mirrors, by nature, reflect until they shatter. As the decade shifted and the dream dissolved, David Hemmings faced a new kind of silence. The cameras turned away. The phone stopped ringing. The boy who once defined modernity was now a man searching for a reason to keep creating. Before he was a cinematic icon, David Hemmings was a child with a gift that didn't belong to his time. Born in Guildford in 1941, he sang like an angel, his voice soaring through English cathedrals, so pure it caught the attention of composer Benjamin Britten. For a few brief years, the world heard him. And then, like all miracles, that sound disappeared. His voice broke, and with it, the path others had chosen for him. He left the choir and stepped into uncertainty. The stage, however, never let him go. Bit by bit, he found his way into film, unpolished, unpredictable, electric. His early roles were small, but the screen loved him. Beneath his youthful charm was something deeper, a glint of defiance that made him impossible to ignore. Then came Blow Up. In Antonioni's hands, Hemmings became not an actor but an atmosphere, the restless observer, the artist who mistakes movement for meaning. The film didn't just capture a story, it captured a generation's confusion. Audiences saw in him what they saw in themselves: beauty, boredom, and the fear of nothingness hiding behind it. When Blow Up exploded into acclaim, Hemmings was everywhere: magazine covers, nightclubs, fashion shows. The boy who had once sung hymns now roamed London's decadent heart. His camera turned on the world that worshipped him. Fame had found him, and with it, the beginning of the end. The success of Blow Up made David Hemmings the voice and the face of an era that never learned to grow old. Overnight, he became the embodiment of modern cool, a man photographed more often than he was seen. Yet behind the fashion and the frenzy, he was already suffocating under the weight of his own myth. Hollywood called, but it wanted the symbol, not the soul. Producers expected him to stay young forever, the same defiant boy with a cigarette in his hand and emptiness in his eyes. But Hemmings was restless. He refused to become a museum piece. He turned down roles, argued with directors, and broke every rule that fame tried to write for him. His rebellion made headlines, but it also made him expendable. The adoration that once felt electric began to sting. His marriage to Gail Hunnicutt, glamorous and adored by the press, became another performance, one they both grew tired of playing. Friends said he could light up a room or destroy its mood in seconds. He drank, laughed, worked, and withdrew, chasing authenticity in a world that only wanted illusion. The star who had captured a generation's hunger for truth now found himself choking on its expectations. He once said, "The moment they start loving your image, you stop existing." And in those words lay the quiet tragedy of a man who realized too late that fame doesn't keep you alive. It only remembers what you used to be. By the time the 1970 seconds arrived, the glamour had thinned like cigarette smoke. The youth revolution that Blow Up once celebrated was over, and its poster child was no longer invited to the party. David Hemmings, once the face of swinging London, found himself watching from the edges, unsure whether to chase the past or escape it. He turned his gaze behind the camera. Directing, he believed, would restore the control that acting had stolen. In 1972, he released Running Scared, a quiet, reflective film about friendship and loss more confessional than commercial. Critics called it too introspective, unaware that it was a coded cry from a man trying to film his own confusion. Then came Just a Gigolo, 1978, with David Bowie, another fallen idol of style and alienation. The film stumbled, just like the decade itself, crushed under its own nostalgia. Hollywood no longer called. London had changed. Hemmings took smaller roles, guest appearances, bits of work that barely resembled the brilliance of his youth. But he kept moving, kept creating as if motion itself could fend off oblivion. There was no dramatic collapse, no tabloid scandal, just a slow, aching fade, the kind that only those who've once been everywhere can truly feel. Friends remembered his humor, his contradictions, his tendency to laugh at himself, even as he quietly mourned what he'd lost. The man who once made the camera his weapon now found peace in simply holding it. The rebellion was gone, replaced by acceptance. What remained was an artist, stripped of pretense, still searching for truth but no longer needing to be seen. In the twilight of his career, David Hemmings found a strange kind of peace. No longer a headline, no longer the face of youth. He had grown into the quiet figure who worked because he needed to, not because the world demanded it. The same man who once embodied rebellion now spoke softly on film sets, guiding younger actors with patience and humor. Television became his new home. Magnum, P.I., The A-Team, Airwolf, the kind of work that didn't make front pages but reminded him that art could exist without worship. He directed, acted, lived quietly, and for the first time in decades, seemed content. He had survived what fame rarely allows, the transformation from myth back into man. Then, in 2003, while filming Blessed in Romania, life made its quiet exit. Hemmings was playing a priest, a man of faith and burden, a role eerily close to his own truth. Colleagues said he was cheerful that day, focused, full of energy. Then, without warning, everything stilled. His passing was sudden, serene, as if the final take had come early. The next morning, his chair remained empty on set. Crew members placed his script there untouched, open to the last scene he would never read. A small gesture for a man who had spent his life in motion. No flashbulbs, no drama, just silence. A fitting end for an artist who had once defined noise. Time has a way of softening fame, turning brilliance into memory. For David Hemmings, that transformation was not a loss, it was liberation. The world remembers him first, through Blow Up, forever young, curious, and detached. The man who held a mirror to an age obsessed with its own reflection. But those who look deeper see more than an image. They see the journey of an artist who dared to outgrow his own legend. After his passing, his memoir Blow Up and other exaggerations revealed the humor, candor, and contradictions that had always defined him. He spoke of lost friendships, fleeting love, and the absurdity of celebrity with the honesty of someone finally free of performance. Through his words, the boy who once sang for Britain and the man who defied Hollywood finally met each other on the page and forgave one another. His legacy lingers not in box office numbers, but in the frames he left behind. The unspoken tension in Blow Up, the raw emotion in Deep Red, the introspection of his directing years. Every film he touched still hums with the energy of someone trying to understand the world through art. Perhaps that's why, decades later, his gaze still holds us the look of a man who saw too much and still wanted to believe in something real. David Hemmings lived his life as both subject and spectator, the man behind the camera and the man trapped inside it. Fame illuminated him like a burst of flash, dazzling, blinding, brief. Yet what followed the quiet, the distance, the rediscovery became his truest performance. He showed that the journey from spotlight to shadow isn't a fall, but a return. His story is a reflection of every artist who's ever chased meaning through noise. He was the voice that grew silent, the face that London forgot, and the man who found peace when no one was watching. The lens that once defined him eventually became the window through which he saw himself again, imperfect, human, unguarded. In the end, the world remembered the star who faded before the credits rolled, but also the man who kept creating even after the applause had gone. Because some stories don't end with fame, they end with understanding. Which moment of David Hemmings stays with you, the daring photographer lost in Blow Up, or the quiet artist who spent his final years searching for peace behind the lens? His life reminds us that the light we chase often fades, but the stories we leave behind endure far longer. If his journey moved you, share your thoughts, your memories, your favorite scene. Let's keep his art and his truth alive through conversation.